Well, I do want to welcome you here this morning. I'm so glad that we are gathering together, not only in person, but also online. So thank you for your presence here. One of the things that has been shared before that I miss the most, not only I can hear us singing, I'm thankful for that, but I just miss seeing the smiles on your faces. I so much miss that. I really do. But I'm so thankful that I know that you are smiling in your heart and God sees your heart, which is the reason why we gather to offer him praise. So way to go, God. Way to go, church. Thank you so much for offering our lives together. If you are new to us, we are so glad that you've connected, whether in person or online, and we just encourage you that a way to connect would be to go to our website. This is the best way to go to hopechurchoakdale.com/connect, and there's some information there that you can fill out. Let us know that you are out there or that you are here, and we would love to follow up and to get to know you and share more information about how we seek to follow Jesus Christ. Also, for those of us who call Hope home, we are so thankful for your stewardship financially. We know that I would say all of us in this COVID season have made adjustments in how we steward God's resources that he's entrusted to each one of us. But as you give to Hope Church, there are 3 different ways to give: online, or you can text, or you can mail it, or after the worship service, you can drop it off out in the main lobby. Those of you who are in the event center in the family worship or connecting with us right now, there's also a basket there that you can do that as well. I want to let us know what's coming up in just a few weeks. Our Thanksgiving praise service, which is the Sunday before Thanksgiving, November 22nd. And we are going to be having our Thanksgiving praise service similar to what we've done in years past. But it is going to look a little bit different because we are socially distancing from one another. And so whether you are worshiping from home or you are here in person, there are 2 primary ways that you can be involved this year. Both of them involved video. Now, for the next 2 Sundays, November 8th and 15th, immediately following the worship service in the fellowship hall, we are going to have set up for you a place where you can go and respond to the phrase, "I'm thankful for," or "I praise God for." And your response can be just 1 or 2 words, or you can fill in the sentence, similar to what we've done years past, where we fill out the leaf, all right? And we will video record your response there, and then compile that into a video that we will share on Thanksgiving. So next 2 Sundays, be thinking about that. We'll remind you at the end of the service where you can go there, walk through, and we'll record you. Second opportunity is where you can send us a video that you record on your own device at home, where you just share with us how you've seen God at work. And that would be perhaps maybe 45 seconds or less, that where you record how you've seen God at work, and then send that information to us. I'm going to be posting this out on Realm tomorrow morning, so the details will be there. But you will forward that to Carl Bliss, and Carl will edit this information together as well for this Thanksgiving praise service. So encourage you, be thinking about that as we have thankful hearts and we just want to celebrate what God is doing. Then also something for our youth that is coming up is an outreach event. The Bag Toss Tournament is 1 week from today in the afternoon from 1 to 4 p.m., and that is for both our junior high and senior high. So just encourage parents, but also our youth to be thinking about this. Invite a friend, as this is a great outreach event. So encourage you with that. Well, as we move into a new month, in this month of November, we have a new missions focus. And this month we are emphasizing global fingerprints. And I'm going to invite Sherry and Anna to come up. And they're going to share with us a trip that they went on this past year. And we'd love to hear these highlights. Thank you.
Good morning. As Pastor Scott said, I am Sherry Peckman, and this is Anna Boovy. And we were part of a small vision trip that went to Liberia, Africa last October. Our mission was to consider a partnership between Hope Church and the Global Fingerprint site in Liberia. Global Fingerprints is a child sponsorship organization whose mission it is to transform the most vulnerable children in the world with the fingerprint of Christ. They partner with national churches around the world to send children to school and help care for their physical, spiritual, emotional, medical, and nutritional needs. And Anna, we saw that happening. All of those needs were met through stories we heard or what we saw for ourselves. So in and around Monrovia, we visited 7 out of the 14 schools where they had sponsored children. The kids, they just melt your heart, and they're so precious. As we drove in and around Monrovia, we saw the devastation of what 2 civil wars and the Ebola epidemic can do to a country. The Liberian people are resilient, and they've worked hard to rebuild. But with an average income of only $725 per year, rebuilding, they just don't have the resources to quickly recover. We came back and we enthusiastically recommended this partnership, and we received the blessing from the missions committee. This brings us to today. Hope committed to an annual fundraiser for a special project or a fund to benefit the children. This year's fundraiser will be to supply sewing machines for the schools with sponsored children so that they can learn a skill that will profit them in the future. The sewing machines are the treadle kind. Probably you have not seen many of those, but they don't use electricity because there is no electricity in the classrooms.
Good morning. As Sherry mentioned, my name is Anna, and I had the privilege of traveling to Liberia with Global Fingerprints. There were so many different and unique stories that touched my heart since going to Liberia, but I'm only going to share one of those this morning. Our team landed in Liberia late Wednesday night and hit the floor running Thursday morning. We visited a total of 3 schools and 2 homes that day, which included a girl named Princess's home. The first school we went to was called Hope Academy. We met so many amazing and wonderful teachers and principals and children there. As I mentioned earlier, one girl that stood out to me was Princess. She was this shy and reserved 12-year-old girl who had a rough backstory. One of the ladies that we traveled with, Heidi, explained to Sherry and I that Princess's father was killed and her mother took off soon after. That forced Princess and her younger sister, Mercy, to live with their older brother, which is where their problems began. Their older brother sexually assaulted the girls and deterred them from attending school since they could not afford it. In came Global Fingerprints. Princess and her sister, Mercy, received sponsors. Global Fingerprints got in touch with Princess's older sister who took the 2 girls in and saved them from their toxic brother. If it were not for Global Fingerprints, however, Princess's older sister would not have been able to afford sending the girls to school, since she does not have a job, much less a sewing machine. Now fast forward to present day. Princess is now attending Hope Academy, where she is able to receive an education and hopes that one day she'll have a career. That, however, is not the case for most Africans. Because a lot of them only live off $1.25 a day, they cannot afford an education, much less a suitable career. If Princess's older sister would have access to a sewing machine, she would not only be able to make a living for her and her baby, but also Princess and Mercy. That is why Sherry and I are here today to ask you to prayerfully consider giving these people, like Princess, a hope for the future. If these women were able to have a sewing machine, they would be able to make a living for themselves to afford such things as school or food or clothes.
So the goal, it's hefty. But God is more than able to shock us with his generosity through the body of Christ. We're hoping to provide 35 sewing machines that can be purchased in Liberia and distributed to the schools. The cost is $200 per machine for a total of $7,000. If God is tugging at your heart, we'll have a table set up in the back each Sunday after the service in November. We can answer any of your questions and let you know how to donate to this life-changing gift. We're reminded in Isaiah, learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the fatherless, plead the case of the widow. Also, in Hebrews it says, do not neglect to do good and share what you have with others, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. It seems just like an awesome ministry that we have the ability to partner with. I even saw Rachel Bliss in the house over here, who's a missionary with Global Fingerprints. So, Rachel, thank you for your work that you do all the time with Global Fingerprints and helping to get these sites up and running. It's good to see you. Good to see you here with us, and it's good for me to be back up here preaching this morning. So. Yeah. No. Yeah. Wow. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much for all of your messages of care, your cards, and more than anything, your prayers. If you haven't been around us for the past five weeks or so, I stepped away from the pulpit for a while because I started having pretty severe anxiety and panic attacks, and something I hadn't experienced before in my life, but I had let the stress of life in this season get to me, and it kind of broke me down, broke me apart, and God is working in me. He's repairing, He's rebuilding, and I'm trusting that this morning He will use me in my brokenness to bring His word to you. So keep praying for me. I'm not all better yet. I don't know if I'll ever get all better, but I know that God has done a work in my life, is doing a work in my life, and I also know that I feel loved by you as our congregation. So thank you for the grace that you've extended to me in this time, and thanks for the other people who have stepped up to preach the word in my absence. I'm grateful for you all, and I think they've done a fantastic job. So we get to jump back into the book of Mark this morning and continue our series, Hard But True. We got, just to give you a little preview, we've got 2 more weeks in Mark, and then we'll finish Mark after a year and a half. I know, I get excited about like finishing and completing books. We were supposed to finish it a while ago. COVID derailed our preaching schedule, and we're going to finish in 2 more weeks. Then we're going to spend a little bit of time in the Psalms that leads us up to Christmas. So that's what you can look forward to in the weeks ahead. I want you to start by imagining with me that you're gathered in a home with your small group. You guys, you're around the table, you're having dinner together. You know, you don't have to social distance, so you're actually able to sit at the table together and share a meal. And you know that one person in your group, one family in your group, has had a hard time financially, and their car broke down, and they were in need of a new ride. And your group's been praying for them that they might find a new vehicle. When all of a sudden one member of your group says, you know what, I just feel led by God to give you my car right now. And they take the keys out of the pocket, they give them to that other member, and this is what they give. I know. You're probably thinking the same thing that I am. That is not going to drive well in the Minnesota winter. But no, how shocking would that be? For one thing, it would be shocking if you just saw somebody give a vehicle to somebody else who was in need. I've actually seen that happen before. It's pretty cool. But even more so that it would be a Lamborghini. Now, this is just a, moderate one. It's only like $200,000. That's it, But my guess is that you're excited, you're wowed, but you're also a little bit uncomfortable with the gift that's just been exchanged. Because it just seems like too much. In fact, you might even think that it seems irresponsible at some point. I mean, couldn't the owner of this car sold this and given away 20 cars to people? But she was like, no, I want to bless you with this. And we're going to encounter something like that in our passage this morning. And I want to tip my hand here, and hopefully I want to put this thought in your head now, and that it carries through the rest of the message, is that what I want us to carry away from today is this truth. Our desire for Jesus should be so strong that we would give anything to honor him, and that we wouldn't trade him for anything. We're going to encounter two different individuals in our passage today. One that demonstrates each of these truths. But we want our desire for Jesus to be so strong, to be so overpowering, to see his beauty and worth and glory. And once we experience Jesus at that kind of level, we want to have this relationship with him that says, I would give anything to honor you, Jesus. You're worth more than anything that I have. As well as there's no offer that could be made that would cause me to give you up. We want to have hearts that say, Jesus, I'll never sell out for you. No matter what I'm offered in exchange, I know that your beauty, that your glory, that your goodness are always better than anything else that I might be given. And we're going to come back to those as we work our way through our passage. We're going to be in Mark, as I said before, chapter 14, verses 1 to 11 today. Mark chapter 14, verses 1 to 11. He starts out giving us some context. Now, the Passover and the festival of unleavened bread were only 2 days away. So that means we're on the Wednesday before Jesus goes to the cross. And it's that time of year, it's the festival when everybody comes to Jerusalem. And the chief priests and the teachers of the law were scheming to arrest Jesus secretly and kill him. They knew that it's Passover. Every good Jew is coming into town for Passover. So Jesus has got to be here too. In fact, they already knew he was there because he had just caused some disturbance in the temple. So they knew he's around. And they're scheming. They're plotting. They're not pleased with the kind of things that he is saying. He's questioning their authority. He made a big scene turning over the tables in the temple. And he's calling people to follow God in a new way. And so they want to figure out, how can we use this? How can we get Jesus alone so that we can take him out? They said, but not during the festival, they said, or the people may riot. Probably we understand that tension now more than we could a year ago. That tension that says society is just in this place where it could explode at any moment. We feel some of that tension right now as we lead up to election week. It just seems like there's a tension in the air, and there would be a tension in the air at Passover because the population of Jerusalem would triple at that time. And Jerusalem was a Jewish city ruled by a Roman garrison. And the Romans were a little bit afraid of the chaos and the rioting that could happen if all of the Jewish people decided to well, rebel against them. And so they were very careful around these festival times, especially Passover. And they're like, and then the Jewish leaders see this too, and they're like, it's a tense time. We want to take Jesus out, but let's not do it right. Let's not do it right now. I mean, it's odd that later on we'll see what happens, but that was what they decided. We're gonna wait till after the festival's over. Well, Jesus is over in Bethany, just across the way, over the Mount of Olives. And it says, while he was in Bethany, reclining at the table in the home of Simon the leper. Simon probably used to be a leper. Perhaps Jesus healed him. We don't know. We don't know. That's the speculation that's there. Well, as Jesus is eating at the home of Simon the leper, somebody that society would have seen as an outcast, a woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. It's available in India. And so this is still, they would have gotten it from India. It's not like it was that easy to do like the whole plane travel thing, real quick jaunt from India to Jerusalem. It was a valuable resource. And what she did is she broke the jar and poured the perfume on his head. She broke the jar and she poured the perfume on his head. That means she used the whole thing. And everybody at the table was like, you're just kind of like, what just happened here? Now, to understand just how expensive and how big of a deal this is, if you convert this, it tells us in the passage, or I don't know if it's in this one or if it's in a different one. Yeah, it's in that the perfume was worth a year's wages, 300 denarii. And those wages, they said if you convert just the financial value into today's dollars, $54,000. So like that's the spending capital that it would have been. What 54 grand could buy you today is what that jar of perfume could have bought you back then. So you're sitting around in your gathering, and you see this woman comes in. She breaks this $54,000 perfume and pours it over Jesus' head. And you're like, how is everybody going to respond here? Like, what is up? Maybe they're going to say, oh, how beautiful. What a gift. Instead, we see how they respond in verse 4. It says, some of those present were saying indignantly to one another, why this waste of perfume? It could have been sold for more than a year's wages, and the money given to the poor. And they rebuked her harshly. So this woman has just made this extravagant gift of love, of worship, of honor to Jesus. And the people who are sitting around, likely the disciples, tear into her in criticism and judgment. She's just made this huge sacrifice. And she just gets ripped apart. Because people are saying, hey, couldn't you have used that to help the poor? And I think what we learn here is that it's never a Christian idea to buy perfume, right? Bath and Body Works, just a waste of money. Waste of money. That's what I take away from this passage. So just write that in your notes. Perfume is a waste of money. No, I'm not really saying that. My wife doesn't really wear it, but perfume is not a waste of money. But people are questioning this gift, and they're like, what is going on here? What do we make with this? What do we do with this? Are they right? Are they right? Like, is that a waste of money? Here's what Jesus says. Leave her alone, said Jesus. Why are you bothering her? She's done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, and you can help them anytime you want, but you will not always have me. And Jesus' response is just one of those jaw-dropping moments. Because part of you, you're like, well, if you're like me, you kind of resonate a little bit with the people who were criticizing. Because you're like, yeah, that does seem like that money could have been used better. I like try to think logically, like I could budget that out. Like we could do a lot of good with that $54,000. Other than make Jesus smell real nice. I can give you a junior hire's bottle of Axe body spray and we can take care of that. A lot cheaper. But Jesus says, no, this is a beautiful thing. He's looking at her heart. He's looking at her heart and he says, what you've done for me is beautiful. Now, does this mean that we shouldn't help the poor? We should go spend all of our money on perfume and not help the poor? No. I think one of the shocking things about this is that he uses this analogy of helping the poor, because helping the poor is one of the most beautiful things that we can do as Christians. It's one of the things that's near and dear to the heart of Christ. And I think that's why those, like when you go to something, like what's the best use of our money? It's to buy sewing machines for Global Fingerprints. No, like that's an honorable thing. Like that's something that we're called to do, is to use our resources to help the poor. Jesus isn't saying don't help the poor. Rather, he's trying to help them understand just how valuable he is. Caring for the poor is one of the most beautiful things we can do as Christians. But the beauty of directly worshiping Jesus outshines even it. I'm not putting these things against each other. They're not against each other. In fact, we often worship Jesus by helping the poor. But what I want to say is that it's not a waste to worship Jesus. To worship Jesus is a beautiful thing. It is so beautiful that it's even more beautiful than helping the poor, and that's a really beautiful thing. So Jesus isn't saying don't help the poor. He's just saying, look, you need to understand just what a big, what a big thing it is to glorify God. That it's never a waste to glorify God with everything that we have. That there is nothing too valuable to give up to honor Jesus. It's never a waste to honor Jesus with what we have. Let's see how they respond, or what he continues to respond. He says, she did what she could. She poured perfume on my body beforehand to prepare for my burial. And truly I tell you, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. Here's the crazy thing, is that in this passage, it doesn't even tell you who it was. If you read the story in John, it does. So there you go. You can go back and look in John and see who it was. But I love the first phrase here. It says, she did what she could. As she worshiped Christ, how she knew how to worship him. She gave him what she could. The same language is used just a few chapters earlier with the widow's offering, when the widow gave her lepta. she did what she could. And I think one of the cool things that you can miss in here is that what Jesus is saying is that this $54,000 perfume, just as worshipful and beautiful as the 2 cents from the widow from before. I think Mark's helping us to see that she did what she could. And I think it's a good reminder for us to do what we can. I'm not saying that you have to go get your finest bottle of perfume and dump it out in honor of Jesus. For one thing, he's not here bodily right now. His body is at the right hand of God in heaven. But I think we can embody the spirit of this woman and the widow when we simply ask God, what would you have me do for you? What sacrifice would you have me give? It's not going to be the same for every person. But what Christ calls us to is to do what we can. And in fact, I'd say do what you can to worship Jesus. And I think I'd say the same thing to you when it comes to caring for the poor. Do what you can. Again, these aren't mutually exclusive things. Caring for the poor, worshiping Jesus, they're both part of the Christian life. But I think in each instance, this slogan applies. Do what you can. We're, based on the resources that we've been given, we're all able to do different things. I cannot worship Jesus musically in the same way that other people can. That's why I'm not up here during that part. They're doing what they can. I'm doing what I can. We all do what we can to worship Christ. But we should do so extravagantly with everything that we have. There's no such thing as, man, I've just worshiped Jesus too much. That worship was just too extravagant. This was a $54,000 worship day. This was an extravagant worship day. I really leaned into this when I preached this passage from John a couple years ago. But this is extravagant worship. But let's do what you can. Don't feel guilty if you don't have a $54,000 perfume to give. Do what you can. Let's continue on. I love this phrase just came to mind as I was studying this passage. A life lived in sacrifice to Jesus is never wasted. If you're living your life with a heart of sacrifice toward Christ, it's never a wasted life. God is going to use it. God used this perfume to anoint him for burial. God wants to use you in your life to honor him, to bring him glory, to make a difference in this world. And as long as you're living your life in sacrifice to Jesus, your life is not wasted. Don't compare it to other people's lives. Don't compare it to what you might have done differently. If you're living your life in sacrifice to Jesus, your life is not wasted. God does not waste that which is given to him. He uses it for his glory and honor. There's still another character, though, in this story. In verse 10. Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to betray Jesus to them. And they were delighted to hear this and promised to give him money. So he watched for an opportunity to hand him over. We see this contrast that this beautiful story of worship is sandwiched in by a scheme to kill Jesus. And you see why this woman was willing to give everything that she had for Christ. We see that Judas is willing to give up Christ for 30 pieces of silver. He's willing to trade Jesus in for a trifling amount of money because Jesus doesn't live up to his expectations. Because Jesus doesn't conform to the Messiah that he wanted him to be. we see Judas not sacrificing for Jesus, but rather turning Jesus over to be sacrificed, not for anything that's really worthwhile, just for a few silver coins. Which brings us back to what I said before. Our desire for Jesus should be so strong that we should be like the woman who would give anything to honor him. We should be willing to take that which is most valuable to us and say, Jesus, here, take this and use it for you, for your glory. And we should strive to avoid imitating Judas, who was willing to trade, who was willing to hand over Jesus for just a few material blessings. And we don't know if that was his primary motivation. But we knew that he was willing to give Jesus up because he just didn't live up to his vision, to his standard. I want to reframe this a little bit differently. Our desire for Jesus should be so strong that material items, experiences, purposes pale in comparison to the joy of knowing him. I think we can take this and apply it to our everyday life, both in what we're willing to give to him and in what we're willing to say no to when it's offered in trade for him. Because the world is calling us every day, every hour, and trying to tell us that these things are better than Jesus. That you'll be happier if you have all of this stuff. It's going to make you happier, so devote your life to it instead of Jesus. And when we devote our life to the pursuit of wealth at all costs, again, it's not that wealth is an evil, but when it becomes more valuable to us than Christ, it becomes dangerous. It becomes sinful. But maybe you're from my generation and you're like, we're so elevated. We care about experiences rather than stuff. We just want like big vacations and things like that. If you haven't noticed in the culture, that's one of the trends is that people in the millennial generation would rather have like a fancy vacation than a nice car. We crave these experiences. And the thing is, not all experiences are holy experiences. There's experiences in life that we pursue in our sin. And we even know them. And Satan calls out to us and says, do this, it's going to be better than what Jesus calls you to do. And yet the reality is that's never the case. No matter how fun something is, no matter how pleasurable something is, no matter how cool something is, it is never better than knowing Jesus. It is never more worthwhile than honoring Jesus, and the same for purposes. There's a lot of good purposes out there. There's a lot of good things to devote your life to. But our highest purpose needs to be to worship and glorify Christ, to know Jesus. And we need to make sure that our other pursuits, that our other purposes don't eclipse that primary purpose, and that we're willing to sacrifice all other purposes, all sub-purposes that we have in our lives to know Christ. So may our desire for Jesus be so strong that anything else pales in comparison to the joy of knowing him. I'm going to pray, and then we're going to sing one more song this morning. Father God, we come to you desiring to offer you extravagant worship. God, help to put our hearts in a place, move our hearts closer to a place where we're willing to give you everything and anything that we have. where we can come to you like the woman with the perfume and say, this is which is most valuable to me. God, I give to you. Take it all. Take all of it. You are worthy of this. You are worthy of so much more. God, there is nothing that compares to knowing you. So take my life as an act of sacrifice and worship to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Let's stand together, church, as we sing one final song together. We want to surrender our lives to our God. And as we do that, we want His Spirit to be at work in our hearts and in our lives for His glory, helping us to know how much He loves us, but our response to Him, may it be extravagant, because He laid down His life for you and for me.
Surrendering all.
are bold words to sing. May that be our heart, that we're willing to surrender whatever we can to know Jesus more. And I trust that when we surrender our lives to God, Jesus will not waste them. Rather, he'll respond to us like he responded to that woman and say, what you have done for me is beautiful. So may we offer our lives to Christ as a beautiful act of worship, trusting that God will use them to bring himself glory and honor and power. Thank you for worshiping with us this morning. May you go here today offering your lives to Christ and living in and living out the peace of God. May you go in his peace.